Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the world's most famous, and frankly, most misunderstood maritime mysteries. If you love separating fact from fiction and getting straight to the core of complex topics, you are in exactly the right place. We're taking a hard, analytical look at the legend of the Devil's Triangle.
So what really swallows ships in the Devil's Triangle? I mean, think about it. Over the last century, more than 50 ships and 20 aircraft have sailed into this expanse of the Atlantic Ocean and just vanished. Usually there are no distress calls, no debris, just this eerie, baffling silence. It's a mystery that's had us completely hooked for decades. But what's actually happening out there in the dark water? Okay, let's dive into this. Just listen to this wild claim from the lore. Some theorists literally argue that the missing ships and planes are, quote, still there, only in a different dimension as a result of a magnetic phenomenon that could have been set up by a UFO. I mean, wow, that perfectly captures the kind of captivating sci-fi stories that make this whole thing so fascinating. It's the ultimate sci-fi scenario. But today, we're going to look right past the aliens and the alternate dimensions to get to the actual truth.
Section 1, The Devil's Triangle Myth, Investigating the Legend.
Now, you might be wondering about the area itself. What's incredibly revealing here is the sheer, unbelievable size of the so-called Devil's Triangle. Depending on whose book you're reading, the borders are totally fluid. We're talking anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles, basically anchored around Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. So we're not talking about some tiny, cursed little patch of water. This is a massive, incredibly heavily trafficked area of the global ocean. Keep that immense scale in the back of your mind as we go through the statistics of these losses.
All right, let's move on to Section 2, Naval Cold Cases Cracked.
Let's see how this myth actually builds. When we track the disappearances that really cemented this legend, 3 famous cases stand out over a 45-year span. You've got the massive collier USS Cyclops vanishing in 1918. Then in 1945, there's Flight 19, a training squadron of 5 Navy Avengers. And the PBM Mariner search planes sent to find them, both gone. And finally, the heavy tanker Marine Sulphur Queen lost in 1963. These are really the foundational pillars of the whole triangle myth.
But what happens when we pull the mask off the monster, so to speak? Pop culture loves to blame giant octopuses or UFOs, right? But the official naval records point to the tragic, highly logical truths of the sea. Take the USS Cyclops. The folklore completely ignores the fact that she was overloaded with 10,800 tons of extremely dense manganese ore. Not to mention she was commanded by an eccentric captain who just recently squelched a minor mutiny. The reality here is rooted in weight, physics, and human dynamics, not sea monsters.
And let's look a little closer at Flight 19 and that PBM Mariner. The myth tells us they were swallowed by some mysterious force. But the reality? Well, Flight 19 was a training flight. The pilots got disoriented, their compasses failed, and they tragically just ran out of gas, ditching into heavy, cold seas in the pitch dark. Survival was virtually impossible. And that PBM Mariner sent to rescue them? Listen, those planes were notoriously nicknamed flying gas tanks. They were so prone to catastrophic gas leaks that pilots literally had to confiscate matches before takeoff. The Mariner didn't vanish into another dimension. It almost certainly suffered a deadly midair explosion.
The physical evidence out there tells a completely different story too. Consider the clues left by the Marine Sulphur Queen in 1963. She was carrying 15,000 tons of molten sulfur heated to 275 degrees. When they searched for her, they found a solitary life jacket, and interestingly, a nearby ship reported a very strong, acrid odor drifting 15 miles away on the morning she disappeared. That points directly to toxic gas leaks overcoming the crew and a massive, combustible explosion. Again, no supernatural abduction needed.
Now here is the absolute ultimate proof of myth-making. Many of the legends attached to the triangle don't even belong there in the first place. The nuclear submarine USS Scorpion is constantly cited as a Devil's Triangle victim, but look at the actual geographical facts. She was found 400 miles southwest of the Azores. Guys, that is thousands of miles away from the triangle. She's suffered a mechanical failure, not a demonic attack. The myth-makers literally just stretched the boundaries of their map so they could claim another victim. Moving on to Section 3, the Science of the Storms.
Let me introduce you to a real-life terror, mesometeorological storms. Sometimes they're called neutercanes. These are small, highly violent, rapidly forming hybrid storms. And here is why they are so incredibly deadly. They can form
whip the sea into absolute chaos, and just vanish entirely within the 12-hour gap between weather satellite passes. To a ship or a plane, the radar looks totally clear, and then suddenly, boom, they are fighting for their lives in a localized storm of incredible intensity that absolutely no meteorologist could have predicted.
And the natural hazards in this region are just relentless. You've got clear air turbulence that can literally drop an aircraft 300 feet in an instant. You've got waterspouts acting like merciless tornadoes out at sea. But honestly, perhaps the most dangerous everyday occurrence is the Gulf Stream itself. When a 4-knot northward current crashes into a stiff northeast wind, it creates these impossibly steep, chaotic, ship-breaking waves that strike without any warning at all.
Dr. Joanne Simpson, a very prominent meteorologist, actually described experiencing these storms firsthand. She talks about being peppered by lightning and smelling, quote, the metallic odor of spent electricity as ball lightning runs off the ship's yards. This kind of intense static electricity, which sailors know as St. Elmo's fire, is absolutely terrifying to experience. And more importantly, it can completely fry a ship's or airplane's communication systems in a matter of seconds, which stops any distress calls from ever making it out.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer, unadulterated power of the ocean out there. Coast Guard Captain Roy Hutchins describes the seas building up into a vertical wall of water from 30 to 40 feet high coming down on you. Think about that. If a vessel gets caught under a 40-foot breaking wave, unless it's a submarine specifically designed to be fully submerged, it simply cannot survive. You don't need a sea monster when the water itself acts like a crushing wall of concrete.
All right, Section 4, Geography and Magnetic Anomalies.
So the Bermuda Triangle actually happens to sit right over the 80th meridian, which is also known as the agonic line. This is one of the rare places on the globe where true north and magnetic north perfectly align. Now, if an inexperienced navigator isn't prepared for this lack of compass variation, their readings are going to be skewed, and they can easily wander hundreds of miles off course. They aren't being pulled by some alien tractor beam, they're literally just following a naturally confusing magnetic map. But you might be asking, if a ship does sink, why don't we find the wreckage? Well, it comes down to one staggering number, 27,500. That's the depth in feet of the Puerto Rico Trench, located right near the southern tip of the triangle. It is the deepest point in the entire Atlantic Ocean. We are talking about a dark, massive abyss more than 5 miles deep. That is easily capable of swallowing massive ships and aircraft without leaving a single trace on the surface.
We also have to consider the intense seismic activity off the northern coast of Puerto Rico. Shallow seaquakes in this region can trigger tsunamis, seismic waves traveling at velocities over 400 miles per hour. While they might only be a foot high out in the deep ocean, as soon as they hit the continental shelf, their speed drops and their height just rears up dramatically. These high-speed waves can easily engulf coastal ships in an instant, long before a radio operator even has time to reach for the microphone.
Which brings us to Section 5, the real sea monster.
Consider this absolutely jaw-dropping statistic. 8,000. That is the number of Coast Guard distress calls answered in this specific area in a single year. That's over 20 emergencies every single day. And do you know what the biggest problem was? Small boats running out of gas. Seriously, the real danger in the Devil's Triangle is overwhelmingly human error. It's an incredibly heavily trafficked area, and a lot of inexperienced sailors are taking risks they really shouldn't be taking. It's not magic, folks, it's statistics.
So why does this myth persist so strongly? Well, it acts as a psychological mirror. Since the dawn of time, humans have invented supernatural monsters to explain the intimidating chaotic forces of nature. I mean, before Columbus, people said the world was flat and you'd fall off the edge. Today, they say aliens are stealing our ships. It is just simply easier for the human mind to blame gods, demons, and UFOs than it is to accept the unpredictable, incredibly violent realities of the ocean and our own human fallibility.
The Devil's Triangle is a perfect testament to the fact that the natural world is mysterious and powerful enough entirely on its own, without us needing to invent fiction. The poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow once wrote, "Only those who brave its dangers comprehend its mystery." Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, but it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the world's most famous supernatural mystery boils down to simple math, turbulent weather, and human error, what other modern myths are we blindly accepting today?